Now on to our wonderful speakers. So I'll pass you on to Atieh from Business, who's our first speaker.
Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Katie and Maze. So ladies and gentlemen, I just wanted to kind of start my talk by providing you all with context of the subject that I actually have been teaching this session. The subject name is Accounting for Business Decisions B, and the key characteristics you need to know about this subject is it is a first year subject within the Bachelor of Business course. So it's a subject that every single business student needs to complete as part of their studies, irrespective of whether they want to become an accountant. Now, I know it might be difficult to imagine someone that doesn't want to be an accountant, but they do exist, ladies and gentlemen. So that in itself poses its own challenges. Now, for this presentation, I was asked specifically what challenges we experienced in the move to online teaching. And in answering this question, I kind of looked at it from two different perspectives. We had challenges from a student perspective, and that came from the fact that it's the student's first experience of university. As I mentioned, this is a first year subject. So really being mindful of the fact that it's the student's first time at uni, the first time they are experiencing university studies. Now, with that comes the associated fear, anxiety, sense of uncertainty as to what to expect and what is expected of them, and the related anticipation that comes with it. Now, from the perspective of academics, we also had challenges, and that related to, number one, diversity in the technological skills of our academics. So so just so you know, I'm from the accounting DG in the business school, and we have a plethora of different academics with various technological abilities, from really, really top, amazing people who help out throughout the entire university, to academics that, you know, really appreciate just talking to students in person and not using very much technology as part of their teaching. So that's been a bit of a challenge in trying to get everybody to a level where they are comfortable in teaching online. The other challenge that we experienced was issues in actually finding appropriate spaces to engage in teaching activities. Now, this actually came back with some of our PhD students who did not have appropriate spaces in their homes to actually carry out classes. And not only that, they didn't have the appropriate technology to carry out classes either. So that was a challenge we were not expecting to come and have to deal with. Katie, if you can please go to the next slide for me. Thank you. So what worked? Well, number one, we decided to pre-record our lectures rather than having live lectures. And that benefited students quite a lot because they had the ability to watch the lecture at any point that they wanted to stop and start the lectures at any given points, to allow them to take notes or to write down questions. And what we did is, instead of having the lectures at the specified time stated in the timetable, we rather allocated that time to a live Q&A session. So that the lecture material was released in a few days earlier to allow students that time to watch the lecture and take down notes and questions. And then they were able to come to this live Q&A session every single week and actually have those questions answered in real time. So students seem to appreciate that more because there was a greater exchange within that live session. We supplemented all of this with demonstration video. So this is something that we actually had not previously done in this subject, and that was to create videos which showed the actual completion of practical topics and practical questions for students, which they found really helpful, particularly leading up to the final exams. Now, from a tutorial perspective, us, along with many other subjects, I'm sure, we moved over to the Zoom platform. Now, my focus with the tutorials was not only to deliver the content every single week, but my great focus was on trying to brainstorm different ways to enhance the level of interaction and student involvement within the tutorials. Now, I thought, well, it was actually quite challenging, to be honest with you, and some of the strategies that ended up working was actually redesigning my PowerPoint slides to facilitate greater collaborative learning within the tutorials. So that involved, rather than simply showing students the questions and the answers, actually working through everything step by step and getting the students to actually tell me what method we needed to use, how we needed to use it in completing the question, and the various steps in that calculation process. So really putting the onus on the students to help facilitate that learning process. We also use breakout rooms, and what we found really worked well within the breakout rooms is making all of the various teams work on a shared file. So that could have been a Google Doc or other related file, and then you could actually see what every single team was doing at the same time. And during the breakout room timeframes, the academic would actually go and review that document while the teams were working on it and actually add little comments here and there, things like good work, you're on the right track, or maybe try doing this particular method instead. At the end of that time, students were asked to kind of report back as to how their team performed in that particular activity. Now, we try to kind of inject a bit more fun into the classes using Kahoot and Mentimeter quizzes. If you haven't used Kahoot before, I strongly recommend it. Once you go on it, you'll see what I mean. The music itself is so contagious, and students love the ranking that comes with Kahoot quizzes. So you can see who came first, second, and third, and they seem to enjoy that quite a lot. And the last tool that I wanted to talk about is Microsoft Forms. So we used Microsoft Forms for the submission of homework and assessments. This submission was usually done in person in physical format. So moving that online actually proved really handy in making sure we have a record of when the students submitted the assessments, how they submitted, and having a record of all of that was really, really helpful. Now, moving back to the interaction and involvement focus, Katie, if you can go to the next slide. This is something else that worked quite well. So I talked with students quite a lot throughout every single class, every single week, and I asked for their input as to what would make our classes a bit more fun. And something we decided is to start every single tutorial with a handful of jokes. So that was the first strategy, which seemed to work. I actually had students coming to the class early and asking me, have I missed the jokes yet? Have I missed the jokes? So that proved quite well. And the other strategy we decided on is to have a bring your pet to class day. And we scheduled this for, I think it was the third last week of the semester, and students every week would actually get really excited about the revealing of my pets, which, as you can see here, Jojo and Ziggy are the guinea pigs, and they all brought their pets to class on that day, which was really, really fun. To the point, if you read the email at the bottom of this slide, I actually had a student tell me that he was wanting to move his desk in front of his family's fish tank in preparation for that class. So that buy-in was really lovely to see. Katie, next slide, please. Okay, so now what didn't work? Unfortunately, so the reason we decided to go with pre-recorded lectures is because our live lectures just would not work. The system crashed multiple times, causing quite a lot of disruption, not only for the students, but also for the academic. And it's actually for that reason we decided to go down the path of pre-recording the lectures and having just the live Q&A sessions. With the Zoom tutorials, I think this might be a comment we hear quite a lot today, is we had phantom students. Students that were on my attendance list, that were enrolled in my class, but who I never ever saw in any class, nor did I ever hear from via emails or anything. So not really sure what happened to those students. But we also had students who just refused to turn on their cameras, refused to participate in class. And there's only so many times you can say, come on guys, come on, turn on your cameras, before you just have to stop and focus your attention on the students who want to participate and are there to learn. And then the final point I wanted to talk about in terms of what didn't work, and this was quite unfortunate, was the student experience. The student learning experience in the online environment was different, very, very different. And the issues that we did explore students' experience was from a technological perspective and a connection perspective. Now, technologically, we had a lack of IT equipment, so some students just did not have cameras and microphones and things like that. We had students whose internet connection was not very strong, which impacted on their ability to attend and engage in class. But the bigger problem, in my opinion, was the lack of social connection that took place due to online teaching and learning. It seemed that students felt they had an incomplete university experience because they didn't really get a chance to properly meet one another, to build those relationships and to form new friendships. And that, coupled with the fact that this was a first year subject and their first experience at university, did cause a bit of anxiety for some students. So I think that's the aspect that, you know, I would really like to work on going forward if this is something that will continue into the future. Katie, next slide. And the final thing, so just in terms of student feedback, I can only provide general feedback at this point as the SFS results don't come out until next week. But generally, students seem to really appreciate all the extra online resources we made available, particularly the demonstration videos. They did still feel supported. I actually have not received as many thank you emails as I have this session, which is really, really lovely to see. And I probably just want to conclude by saying that though some students and academics seem to want to continue these online classes in the future, most of the feedback that I have received from students, as well as conversations I've had with fellow academics, all lead to the conclusion that the preference is to kind of go back to face-to-face classes if and when possible. Personally, I don't think any online class will ever do as much justice as be as effective as a face-to-face setting. But I think we've done really, really well, but there's definitely improvements that can be made. So I'm really excited to hear what other academics have to share with us, but I hope you find that helpful. Thank you, everyone.
Great, thanks, Tia.
Pleasure.